to the definition of Kanban. So the method approach developed to manage the work, that's simple. If anybody asks you what is Kanban, it's not some rocket science. It's simply put just a method or an approach which is to help manage the work while it is being done, while it is actually being done, or while it is being executed, while it is being produced. It could be cars, it could be software, it could be your tickets that you're able to raise from your maintenance of a product. It can be anything. It can be development product, maintenance product, or anything to do with any project that is required for us to get some work done. And that's where the agile approach of the management of work as it passes through the phases of the steps. And the advantage with Kanban is it uses what we call as boards, right? This is what we have seen, that it visualizes the process of workflow. So the actual work that is moving through the process, you can get to see as it gets done. So you don't have to really spend a lot of time to trying to make calls or sending mails. Where are we on this? I've seen a lot of times where about 15 years back when we were working on the waterfall type of project. So the project manager gets a call from the senior management, because the senior management has got a call from the client that, hey, I want to understand the status of this project. So the calls go all the way from the customer to the senior project manager, and then the senior project manager has got a call to the account manager. Account manager calls the project manager, and then the project manager in turn sends a mail to the team lead asking, where are we, what is the status? So the mails again all the way go back to the loops. Okay, need to reply this, blah blah blah. So it's a chain of mails, chain of calls, just to understand where we are. And that could be as simple as we are still working on this. So status is just working on this. For that, it used to go all the hoops and loops. Whereas with Kanban, with the agile methodology that we have been following ever since the last 10 years or so, we did not have to make calls. We don't have to send mails to understand where we are, because the board speaks for itself. So the boards are maintained physically by the team, or like on the whiteboard, they can actually chuck the index cards or the post-its. They can actually try and do that, or they could even use the electronic Kanban boards like Jira, Trello. You've got loads of those, Agile Collab, and so on and so forth. We'll talk about all of those tools later. And with one look, you can actually get to see where we are. So you can actually get to see how much has been done, what is still to be done, and what is completely done. So, and of course, it's not as simple as that. With software, you could actually kind of get to the extent that it has got so many other things like analysis. This is in development. This is in testing. This is testing done. This is into UAT. This is deployed in life. So there are multiple streams of work that you have got in a typical software development. So that's something which we can try and look later, so we can understand how it can get managed. So what is Kanban in that extent? So it's strictly speaking, really speaking, Kanban is not an agile method, but it's not a full-fledged agile methodology to that. That's what I was trying to say. It's a way to get things done and the work done in the agile context. So it has been adopted, it has been embraced and taken into the agile ways of working. And this is one of the best practices that has come from, again, manufacturing. As we had seen Kaizen, we've had a look at Lean. All of these have come from the manufacturing and the TQM, total quality management era, about 70s and 80s, 1970s context, manufacturing cars. So the focus is basically on managing and optimizing the work in progress. That's simply put, that's it. Kanban is not doing miracles. It's not aimed at developing fantastic products and great structuring of the teams. It is basically helping you to manage and see the work, how it's getting done and delivered as it gets done with respect to those different streams of activities. That's the essence of Kanban. And it enables the handle of the work in process. So as the work is in progress or process, you can really have a better feel of where it is, how it's moving. Are there any problems with that? How can I help remove the problems if they get stuck? So that's where you talk about blockages. You understand where there's a lot of effort going. You see where the waste is in terms of waiting, the other person waiting for you. For example, in the context of software development, we know that there's a build ready, but still the developers are not complete with respect to the code. They did not commit the code. The build has not been deployed into the test environment. And you know what? The testers are waiting and waiting because the testers are ready to start testing. They've got the test cases complete. They've got the test cases written up. They're waiting for initiating the starting the testing of the actual execution of the tests and run the tests on the build, but the build is not ready. So in that situation, what is happening? A lot of waiting time from the testers for the build to be delivered onto the and deployed onto the test environment. So that's a big, huge waste. And how can we avoid that? We can try and sync it up later. We'll talk about all the other mechanisms, how we can eliminate the waste in that context. So in terms of this, the Kanban, again, coming back with how you can better have a great grip on the work in progress, you come up with different planning options. That's where you come up with different planning and how you can structure your work in streams so that you don't have to have all this waste, all these waiting times, the huge inventory, and then also try and eliminate all the defects. For example, in the context of software, it's the defects. The defects also contribute to the waste because it's not just the time and effort that you spend in fixing the defect, but also in finding it. So the better, the earlier, the quicker in the process that you find in the life cycle that you find the bug or the defect, the better that you have to make sure the work on it, the effort and time is limited to in that extent. Because if you find it in the requirement stage, for example, if there's a problem and you find it in the requirement stage, you haven't even started developing, which is good because the developer's time has not wasted. But if that defect cuts across from the requirements through to the architecture, through to the design, through to the development, and finally in the testing, if you find it, it's got to go back all the way because there are so many people's efforts involved, so many times of the traceability steps that need to understand, and then you got to waste so much of time. And on the top of that, you need to rework. You need to do a lot of rework to fix that defect. But if it was caught earlier, then you have actually saved all these things, right? So that's why we say that in my parlance, that's what I keep telling people, that a defect is like a tiger. So if you kind of catch it in the initial stages, at the cup stage, you can try and manage it better. You can try and make sure that it's tamed or it's given the proper attention, it's put in the right place. But if it grows from the requirement stage all the way through to the design architecture, it's actually growing in its size and stature and in the severity. So by the time it actually comes to the development, if it's not caught even at the time of development, it turns into the crawling and prowling tiger, which actually destroys the whole application because it's unmanageable at that stage. So you really need to manage it at the stage of the cub, which is at the requirement stage, rather than at the stage of the fully grown tiger, which is down through to the testing or development. So that's a very sense of again Kanban. So it quicker output and outcome. It gives you a quicker output because you've actually destroyed all the blockages. You've ensured that it's all flowing through the pipelines. It's like pretty much like how water comes into the pipe and how it flows through. If there are blockages, if there are holes, if there are leaks in the pipe, the water would drip in, waste. If there are blockages, the water would actually kind of get constrained. Instead of having the pipe this way, this is the bandwidth of the pipe. And if you constrict it with all the blockages, it gets really narrowed down and the amount of water that comes out is actually reduced, isn't it? So if you eliminate those blockages, if you remove those leaks where it's actually dripping, then it would actually have a better outcome because you're actually expecting the outcome the way it should be. You get better water flow all the way. The same with the Kanban flow as well, with the workflow. Oh, that's a nice one. Workflow, water flow. Okay, so the continuous improvement. So it again is a continuous improvement. It's not just done once and then forget. It's not about do it and then forget. It's about a continuous improvement of PDC, as we discussed, a Kaizen, continuous improvement. Plan, do, check, act. Plan, do, check, act. That goes into the loop. That's how exactly you would need to implement Kanban on a day-to-day basis. That's why it's not one-time activity. It's basically driven on a day-to-day basis for every piece of work, whether you're implementing SAFe, as in the Scaled Agile Framework, or implementing Scrum, or lean or any others, irrespective of the agile methodology, Kanban beautifully fits in there because it is an approach. It's not a standalone method by itself. Even though some of the, for example, some of the maintenance kind of or support projects where you already got a project or the software system developed, for example, you've got a CRM system that is already there, and you can try and implement, you can try and improve that. So you already got a system. So the only way you can try and improve that is basically to raise what we call as tickets. You raise the tickets to understand what needs to be addressed and what needs to be improved, right? So that is a support project. So that's a separate project. That's where beautifully Kanban fits in, because you don't have to really have a clear idea of how many you can do, because that comes in the flow. Because sometimes it could be one ticket or it could be 100 tickets, depending on how many defects the customer or the users raise. So there Kanban fits in beautifully, there's no doubt. But also fits in with the Scrum type in the context of a development project as well, because you've got the flow everywhere. The development work is also there. And that's where it really is a fantastic toolkit to be used in Scrum, XP, extreme programming, lean, safe, DSDM, any kind of software development. It really fits in beautifully, because again, it's how you structure your flow of work and how you can actually visually indicate that and take steps to remove the bottlenecks. The important thing to note here, I think this is very important. I did mention that before, that Kanban does not rely on the concept of a time box. So there's no time box concept in Kanban, unlike what we have in Scrum. In Scrum, we've got the sprint, right? So we've discussed that last part. We went in depth in terms of sprint planning, sprint execution, sprint review, sprint retrospective, the daily stand-ups. And then we had a look at how the sprint itself has got what we call the sprint backlog. All of that is fantastic for Scrum. And that's how Scrum manages the work. But Kanban doesn't manage the work in time boxes. There's no time limit, or there's no way that it actually says this must be done in 2 weeks. And that's why the reason why Kanban perhaps is not a fully fledged agile methodology on its own is basically down to this aspect of a lack of a time boxing methodology. And that's why it actually fits in beautifully within Scrum. So if you have got a Scrum team, Kanban is a way to get the work done, but then it cannot be on its own. You cannot just implement Kanban on its own without actually having the Scrum artifacts and Scrum structure laid on the top. And that's why for development work, I would say Kanban is aiding, is supporting it. But if it is just a maintenance or a support project, yes, Kanban can by itself. You don't have to have Scrum or any other agile development, because we'll go through that. Why it is because the fact that you are trying to look only at the flow of work. You don't have to worry about how that gets